What's good, guys? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am back again with another reaction video for you guys. Today I'll be reacting to Shiny Gold Tales 4 true freaky phone call stories. So I'm very excited to be reacting to this video. For those of you guys who are new to this channel, please subscribe, like, comment, click on that notification bell, guys, if you enjoyed watching this reaction video. So without me wasting any more of your time, let's jump right onto this video and see what it's about.
4 years ago, my job sent me to a conference in a different city. I was given a set amount of money for the trip. It was pretty generous, and enough to get a decent hotel, as well as eat out every night. Being the thrifty type, though, I did what I could to save as much money as possible. I found a cheaper option on Airbnb. It was a quaint little house that was a 30-minute subway ride away from the conference center. I arrived late in the evening, when the sun was already below the horizon. The key was in a lockbox next to the front door. I was given the code, so I typed it in, then let myself into the house. Inside, it was furnished, but pretty outdated. Mismatched furniture, floral wallpaper, and a TV that looked like it was older than me. I didn't even bother trying to turn it on. There was a single bedroom available to me, but there was a second one that was behind a locked door. I thought it was blocked off because the owner kept his personal things there. There was also a basement with a locked door that I thought was probably locked for the same reason. I remember thinking that was weird, because he could charge more to rent the place if it was a two-bedroom. Instead, I was renting the whole house for less than the price of a hotel room. Tired from the journey, I decided to call it a night early. I remember thinking how quiet the house was as I climbed into bed. Sometime around midnight, I woke up to a noise. It was faint, a sort of scratching sound, like something was moving around below me. I figured it might be rats. As disgusting as that would be, I tried to ignore it. But the noise seemed too loud, and I couldn't think of anything else that it might be. Curiosity got the better of me, and I crept out of bed, then tiptoed down the hall, following the sound to a door that I assumed led to the basement. The scratching was louder now, accompanied by a soft thumping. My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe it was a homeless person hiding out there. I was creeped out, but I wanted to make sure there were no other guests in the basement. The posting on Airbnb clearly said that I would be the only guest. Given what I was hearing, though, I decided to call the owner just to make sure. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number he'd given me. That's when things took a turn for the bizarre. His phone began ringing, and the sound was coming from the basement. Then abruptly, it stopped, like someone had turned it off intentionally. It was a confusing couple of seconds. Then I called out hello. My voice sounded strange in the silence of the house. No answer. After waiting another 30 seconds, I dialed 911. Someone was down there, and I thought it was the owner. I was sure nobody was supposed to be there, and when he didn't answer my call, I knew something was wrong. They told me to leave the house and wait for the police outside. I headed straight for the door and didn't look back. I was waiting on the front lawn when the cops showed up. They entered the house, and it wasn't long before they came out, escorting the Airbnb owner in handcuffs. He was a middle-aged man with a blank look on his face. At that time, it seemed kind of extreme to put him in handcuffs. It should have been pretty easy for him to talk his way out of it, considering that was his house. It would have been his word against mine as to whether he was allowed to be in the basement. It would all make sense later, though. The police told me what they found when they searched the basement. There was a mattress on the floor, and a large desk with several computer monitors. The whole house was rigged up with hidden cameras. The owner had been living in the basement, spying on his guests. The police said he'd been doing it for a long time. But why would he need to be physically there in the basement? He could watch the camera feed from anywhere. My best guess is that he was planning to do something to me. Perhaps that was the sound I heard. Maybe he was coming up right then. I didn't stay in the house after that. I booked a hotel room, and the conference went on as planned. The Airbnb owner was charged with multiple counts of invasion of privacy and unlawful surveillance. The trial made the news, and the story of the creepy Airbnb spread online. Since then, I've been wary of staying at strangers' homes. I double check rooms for cameras, even though I feel paranoid when I do. That experience taught me a hard lesson about the illusion of privacy and how easily it can be violated.
I would have been
People have to eat.
out by that experience. I would have been freaked the hell out, because how dare you? How dare you invade my privacy like that? I trusted you to make this place welcoming for me, and bro, like, what the heck? You are a psychopath, a creep, every word that I could ever think of, because you could have like looked at this person from afar, but instead of just surveilling them, you were also there physically because you wanted to do something. It would have been a traumatic experience. I don't blame the guy for not being comfortable to go into other people's houses, because after that experience, how can you be comfortable? How can you though? Like, for real though, how can you be comfortable even if you're going to be staying at a place that you're not used to? You're gonna check for cameras because you've been in an experience whereby you've had someone invade your privacy like that and you didn't even know. Bro, that is wild.
Save the bellies for my guide in the game.
When I was 14 years old, I lived in a house with my family. It was a raised bungalow on a busy road in the city. There were 3 bedrooms, one for my parents, one for my sister, and I had my own room too. The front window looked upon the street, and there were cars passing at all hours of the day and night. We always kept the curtains closed, because it would be too annoying otherwise. We didn't own our home, and I think pretty much the whole street were renters as well. That's because our neighbors were always changing, and I never saw a for sale sign. Because of that, I don't think it was the safest place to grow up. It was far from the ideal suburb, not the roughest part of town either, though. My parents had gone out one night, leaving me to look after my 7-year-old sister. Being a young teenager, I felt a bit proud to be the responsible one. Since the age difference between us was so large, I was almost like a parent to her anyway, so it was easy for me to be in charge. She wasn't rebellious or anything, and it was very easy to care for her. I was happy to babysit, even though my parents never paid me for it. I was at the kitchen table doing some homework, and my sister was in the living room watching some kids' show on TV. The living room was at the front of the house, with the large window facing the street. The kitchen was closer to the back, but it was open to the living room, so it was almost like one big room. It was around 8 p.m., and our phone rang. I always hated the sound of that phone. It was a shrill tone that cut into my ears. There was no way to change the ringtone on it, though. I answered, expecting a call from my mom checking in, but instead, there was silence. I thought I heard faint breathing on the other end, but it was hard to tell. I hung up, feeling a little bit creeped out, but I tried not to show it for the sake of my sister. She wasn't really paying attention anyway. Within the next 15 minutes, the phone rang 3 more times. Each call was the same. Silence, maybe breathing, and then nothing. By the 4th call, I was pretty freaked out. I told my sister it was probably just a wrong number. She seemed to buy it and went back to her show. After the 4th call, it seemed to stop. I thought it must have just been somebody messing around, so I stopped worrying. At around 9, the doorbell rang. My sister got up from the ground in the living room, but when I saw her from the kitchen, I told her to stop. She sat back down, and I walked towards the front of the house. I peeked through the living room curtains and saw a man standing outside. Something about him didn't sit right with me. It was dark, and he was all alone. I made sure my sister stayed back as I went to the door. My heart sank when I realized it wasn't locked. Anybody could have just walked right in. It was a stupid mistake of mine to forget that, but we were lucky the man didn't come in. As quietly as I could, I turned the lock, securing the deadbolt. That was when the man outside began talking. He seemed to go into some kind of sales pitch. but it seemed too late for that. I didn't buy it, and I said no thanks through the closed door. He asked if my parents were home. I blurted out no, immediately kicking myself for it. To my relief, he turned and walked away. I went back to the living room, trying to act normal for my sister. I told her it was just somebody selling something. She didn't seem to care, and then went back to the TV. I decided to take a break from my homework and sat with my sister for a while. Then I had to go to the bathroom, so I headed up the small flight of stairs leading to the hallway, with our bedrooms and the washroom. When I was on the toilet, I heard another knock on the door. I froze. Then came the sound of little feet paddling towards the door. It was my sister. I yanked my pants up and then bolted out of the bathroom and down the stairs, jumping down in a single step. I reached her just as she was about to unlock the door. I pulled her back, and after I did that, the man started yelling and pounding on the door. At that moment, I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed the phone and called my parents. My voice was shaking as I explained what was happening. They told me to hang up and call the police, which I did. After a few minutes, I peeked through the curtains again, and the man was gone. The police got there moments later, and my parents moments after them. I tried to tell them what he looked like, but I didn't get a good view. I also didn't see which car he drove. There were several cars parked on the street at any given time, and I didn't know which one was his. My parents then took over with the police, and I was relieved. I realized how close we came to something terrible that night. What really bothers me is that I had left that door unlocked in the first place. There was nothing stopping that man from walking right in and taking my little sister away. In my opinion, the only reason he didn't do that is because he didn't think anybody would be so stupid. I was, but I got away with it anyway. From that night on, I made sure to double check all the locks, and I never answered the door without first knowing who was on the other side.
That was hella close. That was a lot close. Like, it's very difficult being a teenager and having to babysit your young sibling, because that responsibility, you're like, I'm grown now, they got me, they have me, they leaving me here with my young sibling to take care of the house and everything else, and to find out that you made mistakes such as not actually locking the door, which would have I would have been terrified as well as that young teenager, with that realization at that moment, at that very moment where something bad could have happened, because this guy could have just walked up to the door and tried to open it, but luckily that didn't happen. My gosh. My god, that was a terrible situation. The fact that this guy came back, and before he came back, the fact that you made a mistake saying that your parents aren't home, and then realizing afterwards that, ugh, I shouldn't have said that. I mean, we all make mistakes. We all could have made that very same mistake as this person, because we are on alert, but then not all the time. We realize later that, man, I should have done this, I should have done that, I should have reacted this way, I should have spoken this way. And the fact that this person came back and you had to run from upstairs to downstairs because you were hearing your little sister going to open the door, that would have been horrible. That would have been a horrible, oh my god. But then we're glad, I'm glad that they were able to get out of this situation, happy, healthy, and alive. None of them taken, none of these kids stolen, because that would have been a terrible situation, a horrible situation. The fact that I think this person actually knew that they were alone, because why make all those 4 calls not saying anything, just breathing and then dropping the call? Weird. I think they just came the first time to confirm whether the parents are at home or not, because first of all it was the calls, and then the sales pitch and then coming back and then banging on the door angrily. Crazy, but I think it was planned.
I work at a hotel in my hometown. It's an old historic building right on our main street. The building, although beautiful, has seen better days. It's 5 stories high and made of red brick. The floors creak badly, and the carpet needed to be replaced at least 10 years ago, so you can imagine how bad it was at the time. My job mostly involved covering the front desk, occasionally dealing with odd late-night check-ins or guest problems. I was on the night shift. It was me and a single security guard there for the night. Even though it was just the 2 of us, we hardly crossed paths because he was at the back in the security office while I was out front. We both did rounds around the building every night, so we would sometimes see each other that way. It was a little past midnight, and I was standing behind the front desk reading on my phone. It had been hours since I'd had to do any work, so when a man walked in, I was surprised. He was middle-aged with a plaid shirt and glasses. He looked like some kind of office worker, maybe a traveling businessman. Those guys usually had reservations, though, and this man didn't. He had a tired look on his face, one that was common for travelers who had been on the road for too long. After a bit of small talk, I decided to give him a room on the 2nd floor. When I was about to hand him the key, he stopped me. The man asked if he could have a room on the ground floor, because that way it would be easier if he needed something. I didn't hesitate and made the change. We had plenty of open rooms, so I didn't care. He took the key and walked to room 104, which was just around the corner. Just a few minutes later, the phone at reception rang. I picked it up and it was him, the man from room 104. I asked what he needed, and he told me there was something wrong with his window. Then he asked me to take a look at it. I told him I wasn't allowed to enter guests' rooms at night, but offered to move him to a different room if he wanted. He paused for a moment, before declining and hanging up abruptly. The interaction left me feeling uneasy, but I ignored it and went back to my phone. Minutes later, the phone rang again. I looked at the caller ID, and sure enough, it was from room 104. This time I decided not to answer. That's against the rules for my job, but I didn't care. That guy creeped me out a little bit, so I ignored it, hoping he would give up. About an hour later, I was walking the halls as I did a few times each night. It wasn't a requirement for my job, but I did it just to take a break from my post at reception. As I approached room 104, the corridor was quiet, the only sound being soft creaking on the wooden floor beneath my feet. As I passed the room, the door suddenly swung open. There he was, the man from earlier, standing in the doorway. His expression was difficult to read in the dim light, but something about him made me uneasy. I was sure he would have been asleep by then, but he was wide awake. He insisted that I come in and help with the window. I tried to help for a minute, asking him what was wrong. The man claimed that it wouldn't lock, but I thought that was nonsense because nobody else had complained. I firmly declined, explaining that it was against hotel policy for me to enter the room. That's when things took a turn for the worse. He grabbed my arm in a tight and forceful grip. He was trying to pull me into the room. I struggled against him, but he was strong. I was halfway into the room when I managed to slap the glasses clean off of his face. That seemed to startle him, and I was able to get away, screaming as I ran down the hall. 2 or 3 other doors opened in the corridor, with guests checking in on what the commotion was about. When I reached the reception area, I immediately called the police, and our security guard. He came to wait with me. While we waited, I was watching the hallway, praying the man wouldn't come out. When the police arrived, they talked to me for a while, then they went to his room. While they were gone, our security guard pulled up some of the camera footage. There was a camera not far away from where the incident took place, so I was happy that there was proof. The police came back and told me that the man denied the whole thing and claimed that I had been rude to him from the moment he came in. We explained that the whole thing was on camera, and we showed it to one of the officers. When he saw that, he looked up and nodded, then he went back to the room. The relief I felt when they escorted the man out in handcuffs was immense. I never found out anything more about him. I'm pretty sure that he was not local to our town, because I would have seen him around at some point. There's no way that I would ever forget that face. As for what his plan was, that's anybody's guess, but the way he grabbed me was terrifying. It would have been really bad if he pulled me in.
It is very difficult to be living in this world right now. The amount of predators that they are there is just insane. To think that someone would really drag you, bro, it is so unsafe that people have to we have to look over our shoulders, make sure that you are safe where you are, because wow, the amount of stories we be hearing these days is crazy. It is crazy. But I'm glad that there was proof, because he would have gotten away with it, you know. He would have gotten away with it, with the fact that he didn't try to run. It was like he trusted himself that nothing is gonna happen. The fact that he denied it, we're just glad that there was physical proof, like evidence, to tie him to the incident, because he surely would have gotten away with it. Crazy.
I used to live on the ground floor of a rented condo. It was a large building that took up a whole block, and my place was on one of the quieter sides. I had a small patio that was fenced off from the sidewalk. There I had some tall plants for a bit of privacy. Otherwise, anybody walking by would be able to see right into my living room. While I was there, I was working from home. The place wasn't very big, and I didn't have an actual office. I just set up my desk in the living room. Since I lived alone, that was not a problem. Other than the living room, there was just one bedroom. The kitchen was small, and it was part of the same space as the living room. One afternoon, while I was at my computer working, my phone rang. Normally, I didn't answer the phone if I didn't recognize the number. This time, however, I was waiting for a call back from my dentist, so I answered without thinking. I didn't even check the caller ID. An unfamiliar voice on the other side asked for Frank. "Sorry, wrong number. There's no Frank here," I replied. "Are you sure? I'm pretty sure this is the number. Can you check?" the voice said. "There's nothing to check. It's just me," I told him. Then the phone hung up abruptly. I brushed it off as a simple mistake and went back to work. That night when I was done from my work, I met some friends for a few drinks. We went to a bar near my condo, and I had a pretty good time. Since I didn't have to drive, I had more to drink than I should have. By the time I called it a night, I was pretty tipsy. I returned home late by myself. My friends lived close by, but in the opposite direction. I unlocked my door, eager to get back home, but the second I stepped in and turned on the lights, I knew something was wrong. The living room was a mess. Drawers were open, papers scattered, and my TV was gone. I could see that there were no lights on other than the one by my front door, but there were sounds coming from my bedroom. I was about to get out of there when two men walked out. They were dressed in dark clothes, and their faces were covered. They just stood there in the hallway looking at me. For a second, we all just stood there frozen. These were the guys who had broken into my place, and there I was, standing right in front of them. I thought I was imagining things for a moment. The alcohol was definitely clouding my mind, but after a few seconds, I knew it was real. I didn't stick around to see what would happen next. I turned and bolted out the door, my heart racing. I thought they might be chasing me, but I didn't look back. I made it to the sidewalk and dialed 911. As I talked to the operator, a car engine came to life nearby. I caught a glimpse of an old car speeding away from the curb. I didn't know for sure that that was them, but I think it was. The police arrived later. We talked for a bit, and then they checked the condo, but the burglars were already gone. The damage was done. They'd taken my laptop, some cash I stupidly left in a drawer, and a few other valuables. All in all, several $1,000s worth of stuff was missing. I was able to get some of it back from insurance, but the paperwork was hardly even worth it. In the morning, I realized that my lock had been drilled out by some kind of a tool. I didn't even notice that the night before because of the alcohol. I kept thinking about the phone call from earlier in the day. Was it just a coincidence, or had they been scoping out my place? When I checked my phone's history, I saw that the call was from a private number, something I didn't notice at the moment. Since I didn't have any proof, I didn't bother giving this information to the cops. Even though I can't be sure, I think one of those robbers called my phone that day, and that really creeps me out. I never saw any of my stolen stuff again. The police never caught the guys either. In my city, robberies are unfortunately common, so I didn't think the police were going to put much time into it. I sometimes think about how unlucky I was to walk in while it was happening. That's an incredibly dangerous thing. If you've ever heard of people getting hurt and robberies gone wrong, then this is that kind of situation. I think I got away because the front door was next to me, and there was also a back door that the robbers could have used to get out. If I had them cornered, though, then I might have been in real trouble. Eventually, I moved to a house in a different neighborhood, a quieter, safer one. I ended up moving in with my now wife, and we're expecting our first child. That's as good a time as any to start thinking about safety. Crime is something that you simply don't want when raising a family.
Bro, like, that is insane. Oh my god, no. It's insane to think that this person walked right into a robbery. Like, he dead ass walked into a robbery. Oh my god, I would have been so shocked and surprised. All these emotions, scared at the same time, terrified. Like, what if they just pull out a weapon right in front of me and just end it here? Because they could have done that, you know? Oh my god, I would have been traumatized. I would have been traumatized, bro. Like, these people, how would I have been able to sleep after that, in that very same house that I saw these people? I would have had nightmares for days. For days. Because what? Walking in and seeing people in your house. Terrifying. Crazy. And the fact that I'm glad that he was able to have those reflexes very quickly and ran out as soon as he could, and then call the police, even though nothing came out of it. But at the same time, you just feel that sense of security, having the police come over and then having them look around, looking for these guys even though they didn't find them. My god, but I'm glad that he got out of it. He was safe. They're even expecting a baby. It's great, man. The outcomes are great. So I very much enjoyed reacting to these stories, and I hope you guys are going to enjoy this video. And please don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, click on that notification bell, guys. I would really appreciate it. I'll see you on the next video.